Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Good evening, everyone. Today, you are joining with me for another interesting Monday Sutta discussion, and today is day 81. So we've been doing 80 Monday Sutta discussions for the past 2 years, and in today's Monday Sutta discussion, we will be digging into some of the very interesting aspects of practice, Patipada. Now we all have a practice to attain Nibbana. So even before we attain Nibbana, so we have a practice. Even after we attain Nibbana, it is also a practice. Even before you think about your life, in terms of spirituality, it is also a practice. So practice is such a very interesting, topic in our life. So we will be looking at a sutta called Patipada, but the Patipada chapter called Patipada, which appears in the Chatukka Nipata, the fourth section of Anguttara Nikaya, has a couple Patipada suttas, and the first sutta, which is going to be 4.161, it has the abstract of the first two suttas in that section, but even it has the abstract, it doesn't give us the full explanation of the abstract. So we have to look at the second sutta, which we call Dutiya Patipada Sutta, or in other words we call it Vittata Patipada Sutta. So in that way, we will be looking at 4.162 sutta, which we call Dutiya Patipada Sutta, or Vittata Patipada Sutta, which means Vittata means in detail. So as the topic itself, says, you can understand that there are 4 ways of practice. Chatasso Patipada. Now, this is all about our practice towards the Nibbana, and how do different people practice their whatever the things that they are in need of doing to attain Nibbana. Those ways are fourfold. So the first way is painful practice with slow insight, which we call Dukkha Patipada Dandha Binya. So there is a practice some people may have to do, which is called a painful practice with slow insight. And the second kind of practice that some people do is painful practice with swift insight. So swift means quick. So painful practice with swift insight, in Pali we call Dukkha Patipada Kippa Binya. The third practice some people may do is pleasant practice with slow insight. And the fourth practice type is pleasant practice with swift insight, we call Sukha Patipada Kippa Binya. So we have to understand the Pali words for these particular terms. So practice is Patipada. So Patipada means practice. Painful means dukkha, pleasant means sukha, slow means dandha, swift or quick means kippa, insight means abhinya. So abhinya means insight. So let's take a look at the sutta, so that we will be able to understand in a more precise way. Anguttara Nikaya, Chatukka Nipata, Dutiya Patipada Sutta, or in other words we call it Vittata Patipada Sutta. Chatasso ima bhikkhave patipada katama chatasso. Chatasso means fourfold, patipada means practice. So our practice in terms of Nibbana is fourfold. That means each one of us, makes our practice differently, depending on our innate, nature. So that's what we're going to be looking at. Dukkha Patipada Dandha Vinya, which means painful practice with slow insight. Dukkha Patipada Kippa Vinya, painful practice with swift insight. Sukha Patipada Dandha Vinya, pleasant practice with slow insight. Sukha Patipada Kippa Vinya, pleasant practice with swift insight. Okay? Now the first one. Katamacha Bhikkhave Dukkha Patipada Dandha Vinya. So the Pali word called Danda, we find out this term in another place, which we could remember in the Dhammapada. You can remember the stanza called, what's the stanza? Abhittarita kalyani papa chittang nivare dandang hi karoto punyang papasming ramatiman. So that means dandang hi karoto punyang, when someone is late in doing good karma, dandang hi karoto punya papasming ramatiman. So whenever your mind is slack, or whenever your mind is slow in doing good karma, then what will happen is that you will like the evil stuff. You will like the unwholesome stuff. So danda in that context also means slow. Okay. Katamacha bhikkhave dukkha paripada dandha vinya. So what's the painful practice with slow insight? So abhinya is what we call insight. I think I should, before I move on to these particular sections, I would like to talk to you about abhinya. Actually, that will be great. That will be easier for you to understand abhinya in the Buddhist context, rather than I go directly onto the text. Okay, so abhinya, which means insight, has two major meanings. So the first meaning is, the direct apprehension of Dhamma, which means asavakya jnana. Which, asavakya jnana is what we say somebody attained the higher knowledge, while the other one is specialized supernormal capabilities like abhinyas, which we call pancha abhinyas. In that we can see these types of special knowledges. Iddhivida, which means somebody who already attained this particular specialized supernormal power, which means that person can walk on water or walk through walls. And Paṭisota means that is another special capability or knowledge. If somebody has this Paṭisota, that person can hear anything, almost anything in the universe. Third special supernormal power is Cetopariyaya. Cetopariyaya means if somebody has this Cetopariyaya capability, that person can read minds of other people. And then the fourth special capability is Pubbe Nivasa Anusati. If somebody has this particular special knowledge, that person can recall one's previous life by oneself. So one doesn't need to go approach another person to know what was my previous life like. So that person can, not even just one life. If you have this particular capability, you can go back to as many lives as you want, right? So that's the fourth capability. The fifth specialized supernormal capability is Dibba Chakku. Dibba Chakku means you can see almost anything in this universe. You don't need to be present in those places. You can see just as you are in front of such incidents. So that is what we call Dibba Chakku. So those are the 5 supernormal, specialized supernormal capabilities. So abhinya has 2 parts. The first part is asavakya jnana, which means nibbana. So when somebody attains nibbana, that person has this highest knowledge, which you call asavakya jnana. So you you can't achieve that particular higher knowledge unless you attain Nibbana. And before Nibbana, one has to have some indications of the progress of one's spiritual practice. Therein you will achieve these 5 special normal supernormal capabilities, what we call, you can, if you attain, if you have some indications of your practice, I mean developmental indications of your practice, then you may be able to walk on water, walk through walls, you can hear almost any sound of anybody in the universe, you can read the minds of anybody, you can recall any of your past life, and you can see almost anything in this world. So those are so I wanted to tell you that Abhinya, insight, is twofold. One is Nibbana, that is, when you attain Nibbana, you are gaining the highest knowledge in the Buddhist teachings. So it is also taken, Nibbana is also taken as the highest knowledge. But when you practice samatha, then you are attaining jhanas. Like, so when you attain 4 jhanas, then you will be able to attain these 5 special supernormal capabilities. But Buddha warns people, even though you might be able to see some indications of your practice, I mean samatha practice, because we all start with samatha practice to attain Nibbana through vipassana, right? So Buddha says that even if we see that some indications of our practice towards Nibbana through samatha, do not get stuck in those 5 capabilities, because if you get stuck in those 5 capabilities, then you won't be able to make you towards the Nibbana. So some people, they stop, they want to just try out these things, you walk on water, walk through walls, and these special things, because whenever your mind is developed, you will be able to achieve some of the supernormal things that the normal folks can do. But Buddha says, don't take them for granted, because you have to move on, you have to continue until you attain Nibbana. Okay, so the main thing is Abhinya is twofold. Dhamma friends, I'm taking a short time to explain to you about Abhinya, okay, before I move on to the exact sutta, okay? And what are the other things that we have to learn here? Now, we can learn these 5 Abhinyas which come under specialized supernormal knowledges in the Samanya Phala Sutta, Digha Nikaya, number 2. And if you go to other references in the Sutta Pitaka, we can see that there are 3 specific knowledges, specifically attained by Arhans, Pubbe Nivasanusati, Dipachakku, Asavakya. We call them as Tivicha, and we can see a reference in Majjhima Nikaya 36, Mahasacchaka Sutta. When we pay attention to Samyutta Nikaya 45.159, we can understand what exactly is the use of Abhinya when it comes to Asavakya Jnana, I mean Asavakya type of Abhinya, the highest knowledge, highest Abhinya. And Buddha says there are 4 things that we need to understand in order to differentiate, distinguish Abhinya from, I mean this Nibbana type Abhinya from other supernormal, generic Abhinyas. There are some mental states to be comprehended with higher knowledge. I mean, that is what we call Asavakya Jnana. We know that, I had to mention that higher knowledge, Abhinya, is also a corollary to the pursuit of the Noble Eightfold Path. So it is none other than the use of the practice of Noble Eightfold Path. So Abhinya is directly connected to the Noble Eightfold Path. So Buddha says that there are some mental states one has to comprehend with the support of Abhinya. Now this Abhinya specifically means Asavakya Jnana. 5 groups of clinging: the body group, the feeling group, the perception group, the mental formation group, the conscious group. So basically they are what you call panchupadana-khandha. So if somebody has a craving towards these five aggregates, then we call them five groups of clinging. So one has to use abhinya to understand these five groups of clinging. Also, there are some mental states to be abandoned with high knowledge. What are they? Ignorance and desire for becoming, which means, avijja, right? Desire for becoming, what is that? Bhavatan, right? And there are some mental states to be experienced with abhinya, knowing and liberation, vijja and, mutti, right? And there are some mental states to be cultivated with abhinya. That is what we call calm and insight, samatha and vipassana. So we need abhinya to practice even samatha and vipassana. Abhinya perspective, this high knowledges, right? So with that in mind, I am going into the sutta now. Okay. So the first practice, which I told you, was painful practice with slow insight. In Pali we call it dukkha patipada dandha binya. Khatamacha bhikkave dukkha patipada dandha binya. Ida bhikkave ekacho pakatiyapi tibba raga jatiko hoti. Okay, now we have to understand the particular person who is struggling with this particular type of practice. So there is someone, it is when someone is ordinarily full of acute greed, hate and delusion. Ordinarily, what does it mean by pakatiyapi? Pakatiyapi means naturally. So there are, in the society, there are people who have raga, dosa, moha, greed, hate and delusion. They are naturally full of acute greed, hate and delusion. You might perhaps connect that nature to the past lives, and as well as in this life, their environmental effects and their family backgrounds and their cultural backgrounds, and all that can influence someone to be naturally full of greed, hatred and delusion, which means there are people who do not have greed, hatred, delusion so much in their natural life, because they might be so at a later time, but they are not naturally full of greed, hatred and delusion. So anyways, so there is someone who is ordinarily full of, or naturally full of acute greed, hate and delusion. Acute means, so tibba means a lot of, acute greed, hate and delusion. Not even that. Abhikkanang ragajang dukkhang domanasang paṭisangvedeti. So now, on one hand, there is a group of people who have so much of greed naturally in their life. Not even that. Abhikkanang ragajang dukkhang domanasang paṭisangvedeti. They often feel the pain and sadness that greed, hate and delusion bring. Now we have to take pakatiyapi tibba dosa jatiko hoti abhikkanang dosajang dukkhang domanasang paṭisangvedeti. Pakatiyapi means naturally or ordinarily. Pakatiyapi tibba means acute. Pakatiyapi tibba moha jatiko hoti abhikkanang mohajang dukkhang domanasang paṭisangvedeti. So because they are naturally full of greed, hatred and delusion, what will happen to them is that because of the effect of natural often raga, dosa, moha, I would say greed, hatred and delusion, what they have to experience is that they have to experience a lot of pain and sadness, because we know that greed, hatred and delusion always bring about pain and sadness, right? There may be some happiness, but for the most part, there is pain and sadness. So when it comes to a spiritual side of these people, I mean, this is particular kind of people who has a painful practice with slow insight. Now we talk about them this way, and they have full of acute greed, hatred, and delusion. Because of that, they often feel pain, sadness that greed, hate, and delusion bring. Now we're going to talk about another side of those people. Tassimani panchindriyani muduni patu bhavanti. Now this is very interesting. They have these 5 faculties. We call them pancha indriya. Pancha indriya when it comes to spiritual type of 5 faculties. Not chakku sota gana jivha kaya, not the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, but saddha, virya, sati, samadhi, panya. So they are what you call saddha means faith, virya means energy, sati means mindfulness, and samadhi means concentration, panya means wisdom. So they are the 5 spiritual faculties. But the problem is, this particular kind of practice, the people who have this particular kind of practice, who have the painful practice and slow insight, their 5 faculties are weak. The way that they practice, those 5 faculties are weak. Because the thing is that when they are stuck with, when they are bogged down by a lot of acute greed, hatred, and delusion, they have to experience a lot of pain, a lot of sadness, and then what happens? They are not able to practice 5 spiritual faculties stronger. So they can practice 5 spiritual faculties. They can practice, but their practice is weak because they are influenced by those acute type of greed, hatred, and delusion naturally. And then socha imesang panchanna indriyanam mudutta dandang anantariyam papunadi asavanam kayaya. Because of this, they only slowly attain the conditions for ending the defilements in the present life. So because they have now we have to find out what is the painful practice in here, in this first group. The painful practice means if someone is having a really hard time because they are naturally so much attached to raga, dosa, and moha, and they don't know a way out, and plus they have to feel the pain and sadness of so-called aforementioned greed, hate, and delusion. That is what we call a painful practice. So with that painful practice, one will have to experience, practice 5 faculties not in the way how they are meant to be. They will practice the 5 spiritual faculties weak because they are not practicing 5 faculties stronger. So they're going to practice 5 faculties weakly. It's not very strong. Because of this, they are slow in attaining the nibbana, because their practice is painful. That's why one day they will attain, but it is a long way for them because they are practicing a painful kind of practice. Because of that, they are not able to get to the abhinyas stronger. So they only get to the abhinyas very in a kind of a weak way. That's why their practice is painful practice with slow insight. Let's move on to the second type of practice. There are people who practice this category also. Painful practice with swift insight. That means although their practice is painful in the same way as we just talked about, but their practice of 5 spiritual faculties is very strong. That's why they can end the suffering, end the defilements faster. Okay, let's take a look. Katamacha bhikkave dukkha patipada kippa binya. So kippa means swift or quick or fast. Ida bhikkave ekacho pakatiyapi tibba raga jatiko hoti abhikkanang ragajang dukkhang domanasang patisangvedeti Pakatiyapi tibba dosa jatiko. The same information, right? Same details about the painful practice, but let's go on. Abhikkanang dosajang dukkhang domanasang patisangvedeti. Pakatiyapi tibba moha jatiko hoti. Abhikkanang mohajang dukkhang domanasang patisangvedeti. Tassimani in panchindriyani adimattani patubha. Now, here is the important word. Tassimani panchindriyani adimattani patubha. Now, in the first practice, tassimani panchindriyani muduni patubhavanti. So, muduni means weak, which means soft. So, we would call muduni in the practice of 5 spiritual faculties to be weak. So, that is what we call by muduni. But when it comes to adimattani, in the second type of practice, that means stronger. Their practice of 5 spiritual faculties is strong. Saddindriyang, Viri-indriyang, Satindriyang, Samadindriyang, Panchindriyang. Okay, so their practice of 5 spiritual faculties is stronger. So, imesang panchannang indriyanang adimattata, right? Kippang anantariyang papunati, asavanang kayaya, ayang vuchyati bhikkhave, dukkha patipada, kippa vinya. So the difference between the first type of group and the second type of group of practice is that the second type of group, when it comes to second type of practice, those people, they are able to practice the 5 spiritual faculties stronger. That's why they have a possibility of ending the suffering way easier than, way faster than the first group. Okay, so the translation goes this way. And what's the painful practice with swift insight? It's when someone is ordinarily full of acute greed, hatred, and delusion. They often feel the pain and sadness that greed, hatred, and delusion bring. And they have these 5 faculties strongly. Now, this is the key word, strongly. Faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. Because of this, they swiftly or quickly attain the conditions for ending the defilements in the present life. This is called the painful practice with swift insight. Now, Dhamma friends, you need to understand another interesting thing in all these 4 kind of practices. Because of this, they weakly or strongly attain the conditions for ending. So, like, we have to understand that what we need to do is not trying to think about one particular thing in our life when it comes to suffering. Or dissatisfaction. What we have to understand is, what are the conditions of my suffering? How does my suffering make up? For example, I would say, if I'm worried about a person, if I'm worried about something that I really like, I have to think about what are the conditions that make me to crave for that particular thing, that particular person. So, that is what these different people trying to end. So they are trying to end the conditions. They are trying to end the defilements, and they are trying to attain the conditions, for ending the suffering. So they are able to understand what conditions make my suffering, so that I can particularly understand, oh, these are my conditions which will make me into suffering or dissatisfaction. So I'm gonna, get rid of these conditions so that I will be able to end, defilements in this life. And the other thing is that all the practices, they focus on present life, not a future life, right? That's why I always encourage people to think about ending dissatisfaction in this life, in this very life. It is possible. But don't ask me who already attained Nibbana. That's out of our discussion. But what we have to understand is that we have to practice. We don't need to worry about other people, what they do and how they attain whatever, right? Whatever they say. The third practice, pleasant practice with slow insight, sukha patipada dandha pinya. Katamacha bhikkhave sukha patipada dandha pinya. So danda means slow, right? Sukha means happiness or pleasant. Ida bhikkhave ekacho pakatiyapi na tibba raga jatiko hoti. Na bhikkhanang ragajang dukkhang domanasang patisangvedeti. Pakatiyapi. Now, pakatiyapi means naturally. na tibba dosa jatiko hoti. Nabikkanang dosajang dukkhang domanasam patisangvedi. Pakatiyapi na tibba mohaja. So naturally, someone is not into moha, right? Someone is not into lobha, someone is not into hatred. Nabikkanang mohajang dukkhang domanasam patisangvedi. Because someone is not into lobha dosa moha, I would say raga dosa moha, naturally, that person doesn't have to worry about any pain and sadness which may arise out of these attachments, these things. Tassimani panchindriyani muduni patu bhavanti. Saddindriyang panchindriyang, so etc. etc. So imesang panchanang indriyanang mudutta dandhang anantariyang papunati asavanang kayai. Ayang muchati bhikkave sukha patipada dandaminya. Dhamma friends, here there is a difference. Now the difference is in the first two practices, the people who have the practice, they are practicing the practice painfully. But when it comes to the last two types of practices, the people who have that ability to practice patipada, they have a pleasant practice. The pleasant practice means someone who doesn't get bogged down, or I would say influenced by natural issues, so that person doesn't need to worry about one's raga, dosa, or moha. So one has the clear capacity to get rid of those things. So when it comes to the third practice, as I told you, why they have a pleasant practice, that is because they are not naturally full of greed, acute greed, hate, and delusion. We all have greed, hate, and delusion, but they are not naturally full of acute greed, hate, and delusion. Let's see the translation for a better understanding. And what's pleasant practice with slow insight? It's when someone is not ordinarily full of acute greed, hate, and delusion. They rarely feel the pain and sadness that greed, hatred, and delusion bring, because they are not naturally full of acute greed, hate, and delusion. They have these 5 faculties weakly, but there's a problem. The problem is their 5 spiritual faculties are still weak, although they are not naturally bogged down, influenced by acute greed, hate, and delusion. Now, acute, in other words, means very strong raga, very strong dosa, very strong moha. Now, if you are naturally growing up with a lot of, I would say, strong raga, strong dosa, strong moha, that you will have a hard time. You will have a big time in dealing with those defilements, right? But when it comes to the third type of person who has a practice of pleasant practice, which we understand by a person who has no problem, who has no, I would say, impediment from his life naturally for raga dosa moha, because raga dosa moha is still there, but the thing is that person has no impediment them to be raga dosa moha to be very strong in his or her life, so that person won't feel any pain, sadness, insofar as the first two type of people experience. But the problem is they have this loophole. The loophole is that their 5 spiritual faculties are still weak: faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. Because of this, they only slowly attain the conditions for ending the defilements in the present life. But because of the inability of 5 spiritual faculties, although they have this pleasant practice, they are making it in a very slow way, towards a nibbana. Now, in other words, what is more important in all these, out of all these, is the development or the strength of your 5 spiritual faculties, right? That's the most important thing, although you have a painful or a pleasant practice. And the last type of practice, patipada, is katamacha bhikkave sukha patipada, kippa binya. So kippa means quick in Pali, right? Ida bhikkave ekacho puggalo pakatiyapi. Pakatiyapi means naturally, ordinarily. Na tibba raga jati. Tibba means acute or strong. Tibba raga jati. No strong raga. Na bhikkanang ragajam dukkam domanasam padisang. Because of no strong raga, that person does not experience any sadness or pain out of that. Pakatiya api natibba dosa jatiko hoti. That person has no strong dosa naturally, right? Because of that, na bhikkanang dosajang dukkang domanasam padisang. Because of that, that person doesn't have to experience any sadness or pain. Pakatiyapina tibba moha jatiko hoti. So also moha. There is no strong moha. We all have moha, raga dosam. But the problem is, some people may have raga very strong, stronger than us, or stronger than. It depends on the individuals too. So, anyways, this particular person also has no strong raga, no strong dosa, no strong moha. They are naturally okay. Tassimani panchendriyani adimattani patubhavanti. That's very interesting. Now, this particular person who has the fourth practice is very lucky, because that person has stronger 5 spiritual faculties. Tassimani panchendriyani adimattani patubhavanti. Saddindriyang, viriindriyang, satindriyang, samadindriyang, panyendriyang. So, imesang panchanang indriyanang adimatta kippang anantariyam papunati asavanang khayaya ayang bucchati bhikkave sukha patipada kippa vinya. The translation. And what's the pleasant practice with swift insight? It's when someone is not ordinarily or naturally full of acute greed, hatred, and delusion. They rarely feel the pain and sadness that greed, hatred, and delusion bring. It's pretty clear, right? If you don't have any natural issues about strong raga dosa moha, so you won't have to feel any pain, sadness out of them. They have these 5 faculties strongly: faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. Because of this, they swiftly attain the conditions for ending the defilements in the present life. So that's the benefit of those people, that they are getting through this kind of a practice. So they can quickly make their way towards the ending of suffering, defilements in this very life. This is called the pleasant practice with swift insight. Now, one of the things that I want you to think about is that a lot of people think about Nibbana, ending dissatisfaction, suffering in a different life. But I would encourage you, after reading, if you could take a look at the abstract sutta, this is how I read, you can clearly see that this is a practical thing. So, at least if you don't attain Nibbana, at least you know this is how you're going to attain Nibbana. Right? Some people don't have even the understand. They have a knowledge, but they don't have the understanding. So I encourage you to think that this is practical, this is possible, but you may be a person of one of these practices. We can't help not, confining someone to a good or bad thing, but it is how we are brought up in, we are grown up in. So regardless of the practice, if you can develop your 5 spiritual faculties, that's the key to attaining Nibbana. Now I'm gonna move on to something really interesting about 5 spiritual faculties. Now, I already told you this at the beginning. We all know 5 faculties, right? What do you call Chakku Sota Ghana Juha Kai. A lot of people don't know they have 5 spiritual faculties as well. Saddha, Virya, Sati, Samadhi, Panya. Now, when we analyze these 5, we can find out 2 pairs. So the first pair is Saddha and Panya in these 5 faculties, spiritual faculties. Saddha means faith or confidence in the wholesomeness. So that, some people translate this to be confidence in Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. But in Abhidhamma, we understand Saddha means confidence in wholesomeness. Abhidhamma also explains that we can continue with that kind of confidence, in the long run, so that we want some objects. That's why we find out Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, in order to develop what you call confidence in wholesomeness. So Saddha is like that, and Panya is wisdom. So this is one pair. The other pair is Virya and Samadhi. Virya means energy and Samadhi means concentration. In the middle is Sati, which you call mindfulness. Now imagine, suppose there is a charioteer who has to run, who has to drive, let's say there's a chariot, there's a horse cart. Let's say there's a horse cart. There are 4 horses who are going to draw this horse cart, and there is somebody which you call a charioteer, right? So the charioteer, take charioteer to be mindfulness. So the charioteer is the driver is the mindfulness, right? And these 4 horses, mean Saddha, Panya, and Virya, Samadhi. Now, in the analysis of these 4, Saddha, Panya is one pair, Virya, Samadhi is one. So let's say on the left side there are 2 horses, Saddha and Panya, and on the right side there are 2 horses, Virya and Samadhi. In the middle is the chariot, now who has to, drive the horse cart. Now the problem is, the cart has to run evenly by the horses. Let's say there are maybe 1 or 2 horses who want to, run too fast. It's not going to work because the other 2 horses not running, in the same way. What if there are 1 or 2 horses, they are running slower? Then what will happen? The reins of the cart will be slackened, right? So there should be a running of the horse cart evenly. Otherwise, the horse cart will be in danger, or the horse cart will be also the reins will be slackened in the horse cart. So in the same way, mindfulness coordinates Saddha and Panya, also Virya and Samadhi. So mindfulness is the supervisor which supervises your Saddha, which means confidence in wholesomeness, as well as your wisdom, and on this side your energy and your concentration. So that's a good analysis that we can understand about 5 spiritual faculties. And then if you could take a look at the suttas that come after in this Patipada section of the Chatukka Nipata of Anguttara Nikaya, you may see some similar suttas. If you can take a look at the first one is Sankita Sutta, which we find out the abstract of this sutta, and Dutiya Patipada Sutta is what we discussed today. In other words, we call it Vittara Sutta. And there's another sutta called Asubha Sutta, Patama Kama Sutta, Dutiya Kama Sutta, Ubaya Sutta, Sasankhara Sutta, Yuganadha Sutta. Now, these suttas that are coming after, this sutta that we just talked about, they also present different types of practices, to understand. Now, I want to, talk about one out of those suttas to tell you another way of looking at the practices. But these practices are not directly, talking about the Nibbana, but they are different types of practices that are equally worth understanding when it comes to our spiritual life. There's a sutta that comes in this Patipada Vagga section in the same area. We call it by Patama Kama Sutta. There are 4 types of practices. We call Akkama Patipada, Kama Patipada, Dhamma Patipada, and Sama Patipada. Now, akkama patipada means impatient practice. Kama patipada means patient practice. Dhamma patipada means taming practice. Sama patipada means calming practice. Why this is very important? This is very important because we are living in a secular life, so we may sometimes lose our patience, we may lose our tame, we may lose our calm. So that we need to understand that there are different practices that we also need to practice in our secular life other than the practices we talk about today about Nibbana. So if I call this to be secular type of practices, the former one is what you call 4 practices about exactly, precisely attaining Nibbana. Akkama patipada, which you mean by impatient practice, which precisely means how someone responds to an abuse, annoyance, irritation, or argument with someone. So it's when someone abuses, annoys, or argues with you, and you abuse, annoy, you argue right back at those people. So if you do that, that means you have akkama paripada, which means by impatient practice, which is not good, right? Because if you're gonna hit back the person, if you're gonna retaliate the person, that clearly means you have this akkama patipada. In other words, we call it impatient practice. The second secular type of practice is kama patipada. In the kama patipada, you don't abuse, you don't blame back, you don't argue back, you don't retaliate, you don't argue back, because you just tolerate what those people are trying to do, but by protecting yourself, but by saving you, by protecting you, you know that you are not there to hit back those people, because hitting back is not the practice of Buddhism. But you need to have a self-defense, but in case you are in a jeopardy, but you are not trying to hit back. That is what we call by kama patipada, or patient practice. The third kind of practice means, secular practice means Dhamma patipada. Dhamma patipada is taming practice. Now this is more about your senses. In other words, we call them by Chakku Sota Gana Juha Kaya. Now Buddha says in this Paṭamakama Sutta, when it comes to Dhamma patipada, taming practice, I would like to read that for you. Ida bhikkave bhikkhu chakkuna rupang disva na nimittak gahi hoti. Now this is what we have to do when we are seeing images, seeing form, right? When you see a sight, rupa, with your eyes, you don't need to get caught up in the features called nimittas and details. Now, when you see a person or a thing, we know that the first thing that we can see is the nimitta. Nimitta means that particular person. And anubhyanjana means details. That means further details about the particular person and the thing. Now, normally in our life, we get caught up in the persons and the things. Not even in the persons and the things of what you call nimittas, but also we may get caught up in the details of these people and the things. We might think about who is this person, what is he doing, and why he or she came here, and etc., etc. So Buddha says, when it comes to the taming practice, Dhamma patipada, which is a secular practice, what you need to do is that you need to understand that you should not try to get caught up in the nimittas and the anubhyanjanas, right? So it is same with the other rest of the senses like ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. Now, if I explain a little bit more simply, let's say I hear a sound, and then that's the sound. The particular sound is my nimitta feature, and then if I'm more inquisitive about more details about that sound in this, according to this practice, then I get caught up with the anuvyanjanas as well, not even in the nimitta but also with the anuvyanjana. What about the food? When you eat food, then you are particularly, you may get caught up particularly with the food, that is what we call rasa. I mean, not the food, I mean the particular rasa that you will have with the food. And then if you are so much inquisitive curious about the taste, then you will go into further details. That means you also get caught up with the anuvyanjanas. In the same way, the body. Now, Buddha asks us not to get caught up in the nimittas, which you call by features, as well as anuvyanjanas, which you call by details. What we have to do then? Yatvadi karana metang manindriyang asangmutang viharantang abicca domanassa papaka akusala dhamma anvasa veyyung tassa sangvaraya patipacchati rakkati manindriyang manindriye sangvaranga apacchati ayang uccati bhikkave dhamma patipada. So you need to understand that any potential any potential impediment to our senses by ways of in the way of features, nimittas or details or anuvyanjanas will take us into papaka, akusala, evil, unwholesome things. So we have to tame our senses. How can we tame our senses? We can tame our senses by not taking nimittas and the following, what you call, features, the details, so nimittas and anuvyanjanas. So that's how we're going to taming those senses. A lot of people don't understand how they can tame their mind. They always think about the mind. Okay, the mind, I want to tame my mind. How are you going to tame your mind? Because the mind coordinates all your senses. So if you are not particularly looking at your senses, how can you tame down your mind? So your mind is just a coordination thing. It's like in that analysis of 4 horses and the charioteer, right? Let's say the charioteer is your mind, but charioteer has to be very alert about the 4 horses. So in the same way, we have to particularly paying our attention to how our senses work, how our senses execute the objects, right? So that's how we're gonna tame us, right? Then the mind will automatically be tamed. What is samapatipada? Samapatipada means calming practice. Now we talk about the impatient practice. That's the first one, akkama patipada. Then it's the patient practice, which you call kama patipada. And then dhamma patipada means taming practice. And sama patipada means calming practice. So calming practice means one is going to not tolerate kama vitakkas, thoughts of pleasure. What's the proper wording for that? One is not going to tolerate sensual thoughts. One is not going to tolerate harassing thoughts. One is not going to tolerate destroying thoughts of oneself and other people. Not even that. Ida bhikkave bhikkhu uppannam kama vitakka nadivaseti. So whenever we may struggle with whenever there in our mind or in us arises sensual thought, we are not supposed to tolerate it. We need not to tolerate it. We are not going to tolerate it. And then pajahati, we need to give it up. Vinoditi, we need to what's the proper wording? Get rid of it, that particular sensual or harassing or destroying thought. We need to sameti, means we need to calm that particular thought. Byanti karoti, we need to eliminate it because it's no purpose. It doesn't make any meaning. Anabhavangameti, we need to obliterate it, we need to wipe it out, because those kinds of kama vitakkas, I would say sensual thoughts, I mean, we all have kama vitakkas, but the thing is that we should understand the balance. We should understand the level of the kama vitakka. We should also understand, am I really mindful about my kama vitakkas, and I'm not taking it to a place where I'm in jeopardy. But himsa, vihinsa, and vihinsa, and the last one called vyapada, they all are really bad ones, right? So we need to similarly equally understand these bad thoughts, and then we need to eliminate, give them up, and all that. So that is what we call by samapatipada, which means the practice of calm practice, right? So there are 4 practices when it comes to secular life: akkama patipada, impatient practice; kama patipada, patient practice; dhamma patipada, taming practice; sama patipada, calming practice. But Dhamma friends, this is on a secular basis. But the sutta we discussed today provides us the best type of 4 practices people follow. They are 4-fold. The first one is, as you understood, painful practice with slow insight, dukkha patipada dandhabinya. Painful practice with swift insight, the second one, which is called dukkha patipada kipphabinya. Pleasant practice with slow insight, which means sukha patipada dandhabinya, the third one. And the fourth one is pleasant practice with swift insight, sukha patipada kipphabinya. So I would encourage you to read the sutta and be confident that you are able to end the dissatisfaction, suffering in this very life by developing your 5 spiritual faculties. So please do that, and you will be there. You will be able to experience the fruitfulness of the Dhamma teaching in this very life. Thank you. Any questions today? Let me see. Okay, looks like there are no questions. Let's share all the good karmas with the deities and the departed relatives. So may all the good karmas we've been accumulating in all these ways be shared by all the departed relatives who passed away in the name of all of us. May they be happy and peaceful. May they attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Idam me ñāti nang hutu sukita huntu ñātayo. Idam me ñāti nang hutu sukita huntu ñātayo. Idam me ñāti nang hutu sukita huntu ñātayo. Also, we're going to share all the good karmas with the deities, devas. May all the devas partake in all these good karmas, and may they be happy and peaceful. May they bless all of us. May they protect the Buddha Sasana. May they also attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Ittavata cha ammehi sambatang punya sampadang. Sabbe deva anumodantu, sabbe bhuta anumodantu, sabbe satta anumodantu, sabba sampatti siddhya, akasattha cha bhummattha deva naga mahiddhika, punyantang anumoditva, chirang rakkang tuloka sasanang, chirang rakkang tudesanang, chirang rakkang tumang paranti. Finally, Let's make a great wish. This is not just a normal wish, and we've been doing this all the time. We are always making this wish. May all the good karmas we've been accumulating in all these ways also help us all attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. I'm going to be blessing you with couple more stanzas. Please receive the blessings. Abhivadana silisya nichang vadha pachayino chattaru dhamma vadhanti ayuvanno sukhang balang ayurarokya sampatti sagga sampatti mevacha ato nibbana sampatti iminati samijjato. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, have a good night and have a good morning and have a good day for those who are watching from Asia. Yeah, take care, be safe.